Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to mybigfootsighting.com.
My most recent Bigfoot sighting happened a month ago. And this happened in California in an undisclosed area that I can't mention right now. And before I talk about this encounter that I had, I wanted to just go back so you know a little bit about me and have a little bit of background of where I'm coming from. First, my name's Stephen Berrios, also known as Noxium, which is my Native American name. And I was a teacher, a science and naturalist teacher for 34 years right here in California. And I'm semi-retired now. And I say semi-retired, because I still go out in the field and do hands-on nature science and still track and do a lot of tracking of different animals in my bioregion. And as a 34-year veteran naturalist, I've been around right here in Northern California most of the time. I got my start in Sonora Wilderness in Fremont, California. And then from there, I went to the Hayward Shoreline as a naturalist doing marshland ecology. And that area is really interesting because there's a lot of animals that are always walking around in the mudflats. So as a tracker, learning my skill is because I do a lot of plaster tracking of creatures. And I was also teaching tracking classes there. So, I was able to develop my skill, plaster casting, and it's an art skill that I do to this day. And it was like one of my mainstays as a naturalist, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I work with groups of folks anywhere from 6th grade all the way to college, and there's usually 15 in my group with 2 chaperones. And I'm out there teaching them about nature and ecology, Sierra Nevada mountains. And one of my main things on Thursdays is, there's like a leave no trace or don't take anything from nature. But as a science teacher, I wanted people to learn about nature. And one of the ways that I could do it is that on that Thursday, I teach them how to do animal tracks. So folks that came with me all those times, they learn how to do animal tracking. And, it's a wonderful thing hiking around with 15 kids and 2 chaperones all those years. But now that I'm retired, I'm 65 years old now. I relish the opportunity to go out on my own. Now, in the Sierra Nevada mountains, several years ago now, I did come across a Sasquatch there. And I want to talk about that another time, actually, because we're talking about the more recent time right now. And folks, I do this for a living. I go out in nature. I don't watch too much TV. I make sure that if I'm watching TV, I'm giving nature an equal time zone so that I balance what I feel is my biorhythms and equilibrium. So I spent a lot of time outside, and it's one of the reasons why I became a naturalist in the first place. And, I do have a master's degree in science education, bachelor science in recreation, and an AA in art. So my career, I was able to blend all these things together and be a teacher of nature. But like I said, nowadays I'm more or less a freelance naturalist, and I enjoy going out in nature alone. Now I'm a professional naturalist, so I don't advise any people to go. There's always safety in numbers. However, like I said, this is something that I've been doing for many, many years. And, thank the creator, I keep coming back. It allows me to come back. I've been able to go out there and track a lot of, interesting, beautiful animals here in California. Mountain lion, black bear, packs of coyotes, wolves. And now, just most recently, I tracked a Sasquatch. So this is my recent Sasquatch encounter. Bigfoot, people I like the name Sasquatch. I just love that name. And I have to tell you how this came to be. It's an amazing story to me, even right now. And, I was retired from my job up in the Sierra Nevada mountains for 3 years. I was living in Calaveras County, living with my uncle at that time. And I was out there at Lake Comanche at this particular time, and I was tracking a black bear that was, not too far away from where we were at. And, I wanted to plaster cast a few of those beautiful black bear tracks. So I was following around this black bear. And I got a phone call actually from one of my cousins who was telling me that they were telling me that, my godson, who is a trucker, was driving through a remote area here in California. And as he drove by, he came across the Sasquatch, and he's a trucker, and he had to stop. And, he was a skeptic at that point in time. He even jabbed me at how I was such a believer in it. Because, when skeptical people, that's just the way they are until they see it for themselves, right? So anyway, he came across this Sasquatch, and it was like at 3:00 in the morning. And then the next day, he gave me a phone call. And, I'm his godfather. He said, Nino, we don't have any 12-foot gorillas in California, do we? And, I just, man, whoa, my eyes just lit up like, you just, I've been waiting for this opportunity. Now, another time I'll come on the show and I'll tell you about my experiences with the Sasquatch in the Sierra Nevada mountain. This happens to have taken place in another area. However, I was waiting for my opportunity because I'm always on the lookout for a credible report. My tracking bag is always full, has everything I need, and it's always packed. It's my plaster of Paris, my hori water containers, mixers, you name it that I need in there, it's in there. The first aid kit. So when my godson told me that he had seen this Sasquatch, and okay, as soon as you've seen one, your whole world changes. You're never going to be the same. I think you're even better than you were before. And the reason why I say that is because of the multitudes of human beings that we have here. You're one of the few people that have actually seen it. So you just actually went from a skeptic, a non-experiencer, to a believer and an experiencer in a split second. So it's an amazing phenomena. And I'm going to let you know, I have a master's degree in science. I don't want to point that out all the time. I mean, I'm proud of what my achievement is, but I'm letting you know, man, I'm an absolute 100% believer in this Sasquatch, and I'm going to continue why, and then you'll know why I'm not a believer in this way. So I said to my godson, "Give me the coordinates right now. Where did this take place?" And he said, and with Google and everything, the way the internet and connections are, well, I got that message from him, and like I said, my bags are always packed, and I just threw all my gear in my truck. And the next day I went out to this area, and now look, folks, I'm 65 years old, right? Like I said, it's something that I do, so I don't recommend you going out there like I do. Let me do my thing, and I'll come back with information for you if I'm allowed to come back. So I went over there, and I got on. This area has a rest stop close by to proximity where the Sasquatch sighting was, like 7, 8 miles away. But so I was able to get close to where I could park my truck, and then I had to go into that forest, and got my gear, and I went hiking in there, and then sure enough, I caught on to the Sasquatch's trail. And I want to let you know, folks, everybody in the world, Bigfoot, this Bigfoot, and, the toes are all perfect, and everything that you could think of, like perfect footprints. Those are rare. You have to be like in a sandbar. You have to be like in mud where this, close shoreline. These creatures, they live in higher altitudes than we go up. We don't, everybody's all, well, how come you can't find this and that? They live in higher altitudes. We don't normally go up there. Gotta be tough, man. And it's a little difficult, very difficult. So we don't normally go into their habitat. But on this particular day, I caught onto that trail. And, we're talking 1,200 foot level. So we're talking in an oak woodland. And, it had rained heavily for like 5-6 days there in this territory. And the ground was heavily saturated. So when I got onto this trail, I found these really highly unusual tracks. And when the reason they were highly unusual is because this area is a oak woodland, but it's associated with the grassland. So the environment has a lot to do with the way the tracks are. Because this Sasquatch, he weighs a lot. He's 11 footer. He's weighing 1,000 pounds. He's a big boy, big Sasquatch. Big Sasquatch. And his footprints, he's so big. And the ground was so saturated right there that when he steps on the ground, man, he leaves digits. I mean, the ground squirts out on both sides, and and because it's not even terrain, he's going uphill, and he's going. They're small hills. However, there's a grade to the hillside right there, and his big weight, he's slipping and sliding. So some of these tracks, I was looking at them, I was all, you know what? I look for abnormalities in nature, right? I went in there, I go, well, you know what? If he's through here, he left marks. Now, a lot of people will always look at the high marks. They're always looking at, 8-foot tree branches that are snapped in two or whatever. This, I got lucky actually, because, once I got onto his trail and I had to go in there, I actually found his feeding his feeding grounds. And what this Sasquatch was doing at this particular time is that he was reaching in. Okay, this hillside was just full of boulders, and he could reach in with his left hand. And he could pull boulders out that are bigger than bowling balls, like they're marbles, for one thing. Now, a bear, black bears in California, they have nails, and when they dig into the earth, they go backwards. They get their claws in there, and then they pull that boulder. They go back. They don't throw rocks forward. Their claws are designed to go backwards. So anyway, the Sasquatch, not only can he pull out boulders and push them behind him, he could pick them up and throw them in front of him. The only creature that could do such a thing is a human being, but we can't even get close to what this creature can do in an area. It needs a lot of food. And, this area I was in actually has a lot of excellent carrying capacity for it. Food, space, water, shelter, and he could sustain him and the family of Sasquatch. As a matter of fact, it's not just one Sasquatch, Bigfoot, as you like to call him. But so I went in there. And I was actually utterly amazed. Now, as a science teacher all these years, I came in there, and here I am. I'm finding these tracks, and I mean, to me, I hit the jackpot because I look for stuff like this, and I can't go into full detail on a lot of the stuff on how I was able to go up further and actually connect with the Sasquatch. Maybe later, maybe not right now. But let me just tell you, my thoughts on it right now is that this area where the Sasquatch is feeding, a black bear, like I'll go back to the black bear, they'll do a few rocks and they'll push them backwards and they'll eat whatever is in there really quick, and and then they'll move forward. There's grubs in there, right? There's small little invertebrates that a bear will eat, and they're omnivores, so they'll eat anything that's in there. Well, this Sasquatch, this feeding grounds is over 75 yards in a single line. That means that this Sasquatch was actively pursuing prey by pulling out these boulders, flipping them on back, throwing them on front, sticking his hands in the mud, right? Right hands, left hands in the mud, and his feet. And they were, like I said, it was really slippery right there. So on the grass right there, he was slipping and sliding, pulling out rocks, grabbing prey. Now, this prey isn't just grubs right there. There's a whole line. So that's an unbelievable amount of energy that was in pursuit of prey. So we're talking small rodents. We're talking, reptiles that are sleeping in there because it was cold. So there were snakes in there. We're talking grubs of various kinds of beetle grubs, whatever was in there. Mice, shrews, voles, anything that this Sasquatch could get, he was getting. And what you and I, if we were going to pull out a boulder and we were going to scoop up a mouse to put it in our mouth to eat, we would cup our hands. Our thumbs would be, right next to our fingers, and we cup it and pull it into us. That's how a Sasquatch. That's what I learned off of this Sasquatch. That he goes in there, cups his hands, pulls whatever, and he's eating. He's an omnivore, but right here, he's eating whatever's in there. And there's probably also, there was Brodea bulbs in there and other wild animal foods of the forest that it could eat. But I was totally impressed with this area. I just couldn't believe it, actually. And I thought I was gifted. The epitome of my naturalist science career. Here I am in this one area, and I have just come across a Bigfoot feeding grounds. Well, like I told you, I'm going, whoa, man, I'm having my mind blown in many ways because the presence of the Sasquatch, you could just feel it around. You could, the tracks are absolutely fresh. And I was going, whoa, man. I go, it's here. It's here. I go, I'm here. And, I, I, uh, I got my backpack right then, and then I plaster casted my first track of 18 tracks that I have so far. And I say so far because I'm actually getting ready for my next expedition, which is going to be happening in another week or two. I'm actually going to head out again. So anyway, I saw this one track, my very first track that I plaster casted. It was actually a hand track. It was so unusual. I looked at that and I was looking at it and wow, that's just so weird. I would have to plaster cast this track. And sure enough, it's a beautiful track. And I lifted out a boulder, went in there and he scooped something up, but he left a really beautiful hand impression. And the thing with these tracks that I have is that, okay, now interest, like I said, I carry a lot of plaster and I carry my backpacks and I'm pretty much equipped to do the job. So I had to go in there with this Sasquatch always really looking by me. Actually, he was peeking behind me, peeking at me. I seen him and he seen me. And, I believe he let me alone to just do what I was doing. He was very curious, very looking at me, behind trees. But, I just started at that one point to plaster cast tracks. And that first one right there, okay, that was my first day encounter. And then, wow, that one track took me a lot of plaster. That's another thing, these plaster casted tracks I have, all of them took 3 to 4 times more plaster than I would do a black bear easily. And like I said, I found this feeding grounds, and I actually plaster casted more handprints than I have footprints. I only have like 6 footprints. The rest are handprints. And, they weigh a ton, right? Because, so I had to do them one at a time. And this is like over a 10-day period. And the first day, boy, I'll tell you, came across the Sasquatch right away in the forest and plaster casted that one track, and it was getting late. So I went back. I had my truck and I went to the rest stop, which I told you earlier was like 7 miles away from where this took place. And I'm in my truck at this rest stop. I call it my favorite rest stop now. Some people might not think that this is or some people probably have even encountered this. I'm sure they have. Anyway, this Sasquatch hiked around that mountain, that 7 miles, and he came right to my truck. And I couldn't sleep anyway that night. I was like totally just incapacitated. I was watching TV on my phone right here. My body is situated where my head is at my steering wheel. My passenger door is facing out into the wilderness and the mountains. Well, that Sasquatch came down that mountain, and he came right to my truck. And he looked right at me, right through my window. He put his left hand on my truck window right here. His right hand was on my quarter panel, and he had to lean down because he's so big. So his whole head was looking right at me through my window. And, you know, he was checking me out, and I was checking him out. I couldn't move. You're not going to be able to move, or I was unable to move. I was like totally incapacitated and fascinated looking at it. And it looked at me, which what I thought was a smile at first. And I could, like I said, there was no moving. There was no moving. I actually felt like my stomach was like getting in a knot. And I looked at that Sasquatch, and earlier, I had a bunch of granola bars and peanut butter bars right here and it was in the back of my truck. I forgot to bring them in. Now they were all going to be for him anyway, him and I, because I do like, peanut butter cups and, stuff like that. So, but right then, he found the bag full of granola bars and everything right in the back of the truck. And he grabbed it and he took a big bite out of it. Now, that's plastic, that's paper, along with the granola bar, the chocolate bars. He wound up taking about 3 or 4 of those. But he chewed that, didn't really like it, didn't understand it. We wouldn't like that either. We take a big bite of a plastic bag full of paper and eat granola. We're going, what the heck, Anyway, I leaned back down, and it looked at me. And it didn't like that. And then the next look it gave me was, I don't think it was very pleasant. Then he went, oof! And he took off back in the forest. And I was just there in my truck. And let's just say I had to get out of my truck for a little while, right? I didn't drive away, believe it or not. The rest stop fortunately had a bathroom in there, and I spent the rest 3 hours in the bathroom, I believe. And then, it kind of shook me up in a way. It surprised me like crazy to come up to my truck like that. But, I felt that, I don't know how to tell you this, but I said, you know what? He isn't going to chase me away. I go, I've been looking for you my whole life, Sasquatch. I'm not leaving right now just because you came to my truck and tried to scare me away. So this turned into a 10-day tracking experience for me, where I was able to plaster cast as many tracks as I have. And like I said, I have more hand tracks than foot tracks. And I don't have a death wish or anything like that. Like I said, I'm a tracker naturalist. These are things that I'd like to do. I like to spend my time in nature, hands-on nature, me and nature. Like right now, in the winter time in California, this is when I love to go out. The harshest weather is going to show you the best stuff. So, it's one of the reasons why I'm heading out again right now. I'm not just going after Sasquatch tracks. I'm after wolf tracks, black bear. It's just something I do. I love to give Christmas gifts, black bear tracks for Christmas as gifts for friends and family. So each day that I went out there was a struggle to track, because each track that I plaster casted, each one weighs more than your average track. So when you're tracking this thing, you got to go in there with a backpack full of plaster, water, mixing your digging material, instruments, and everything. And then that has to dry. So I was plaster casting one track, leaving it overnight, coming back, putting another plaster cast on another, taking that one out, rotating them, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, 1, 2, just one after another. And, a little difficult, but, it really exhilarating. Just the thought of it, and then just knowing that there's a Sasquatch nearby you, it's going to, your alert elevation, or at least mine, you're skyrocketing. You have adrenaline in you. You're kind of unexplainable in ways. And, I was fortunate to be in that one area, and I'll have to give you a little bit of a secret of mine is that, I did gift this creature a few things, and it accepted them. And every time I gifted it something, it gave me something back. It left me little pyramid rocks and left me broken branches where they don't belong. And it just let me know that it was around. And I let it know that I was around, and, I believe it just allowed me to do what plaster cast my tracks. And, I have 25 as a goal. I have 18 right now. And, I'm actually might hopefully even get more than that, but I am headed back to go tracking, like I said. And it's always a tricky thing because, there's more than just a Sasquatch there. I mean, there is even the elements of the landscape itself, all this rain, landslides, it's tough terrain, but I'll be all right. Like I said, I have a friend of mine that I let know where I go in. I go in at a certain time and I come back at a certain time. So I have a good connection there. And like I said, I'm 65-year-old naturalist now, so I don't go out in the bush and spend the night like I used to. I go out and, go in early and come in before nightfall. That's my tracking these days. So, the Sasquatch, yeah, they're definitely a real, you know what? I call them a humanoid creature because the tracks that I have, their hands are quite similar to primates. And not only that, they have dermal ridges. Dermal ridges are spotted on these tracks that I have, both footprints and handprints. And just the enormity of the tracks themselves, so. And what I'm getting at now with these tracks is, because I do get asked, why in the world would you want to do do this and track? And, what the heck, you're risking your life and all these things. And, as a science teacher, I have to let you know that we have to mix and match. So the more samples that you have of something to examine, the more evidence that you have to examine with. So if we have all these tracks, and a lot of them are totally bizarre, they're unexplainable, they can be explained, and science can explain them. So we have these tracks now, and so what I'm looking for in these tracks right now is to get them analyzed by other trained professionals in the field, whatever they may be, cryptozoology, mammalogy, primatology, I'd like to get these hands examined. I believe there's a PhD gentleman, well, Esteban Soriano, I believe, who's a primate hand specialist. I would like to have him take a good look at the tracks that I have. But I'm more than open to anybody to look at them, and I'm looking to get them X-rayed because these hands that are going into the earth, they're incredible, they're bizarre looking, and so we got to take the tracks to the next level. So we're talking X-ray, we're talking getting them laser scanned. We're talking having them all together as a unit so people could actually look at them and examine them. And like I said, uh, and the deep ecological long-term goal, I believe, that we're thinking about here is, okay, look, I'm not in it for fame and all that stuff. I just know what I know. So I'm going to let you know what I know. And at some point, this animal should be registered as a legitimate creature of science who does not want to be known by science. They're really shy creatures. They don't really want to have a whole lot to do with us human beings. And they're curious, right? They're curious enough to come and check me out what I'm doing. And, I'm lucky and thoughtful enough to them to know that I'm not a threat to them, because they know what guns are. They know what a threat is. That's why a lot of Bigfoot researchers out there, they play peekaboo because the Sasquatch, they're being intruded on. It's not like we're invited guests into their habitat. They're stunned that, look, what is going on here? There's a lot of people, researchers, and okay, a lot of that has come to light, and we've come to this point. And with all of our collective experiences and photographs and tracks, and there's a lot of people that come and they see them now, and they're being seen all across this country and elsewhere in the world. Our world is expanding, so naturally we're going to come across them time to time. And we as a human species need to think of other creatures out there. This animal is the top of the food chain. It needs a lot of space. So we need to preserve, not conserve, but actually preserve certain areas where these animals, they live. And there's an entire food chain that goes along with them. So not only do we protect the Sasquatch, we protect every single animal that's in an ecosystem. So I don't know if that's the bottom line, or all I know is that if we have these tracks, we'll get them x-rayed and checked out, and like I said, hopefully at some point in time, I'll tell you something, even in Washington State right now, Oregon, there is legislation, and there's signs and parks, and there's a lot of things going on out there. Yeah, so Bigfoot folks out there, just want to mention to you also, our human time, our good time is to go into parks and things during the day and go with a few friends, and enjoy nature hikes, things like that. If you see a Sasquatch, it's a wonderful thing. And, don't go harassing them and things like that. That's where I'm at with this Sasquatch endeavor, this lifelong endeavor of mine. I want to thank you for listening in. I can tell you also right now that over a 10-day period, this Sasquatch was able to and I don't know how to explain it, but it was able to communicate with me and let me know what it was thinking. And that's why I was telling you earlier, that it knows what a hunter is. It knows what a gun is. And when I go out there, I don't carry a gun. And that's one of the things that the Sasquatch actually checked me out on. It said, "You're not a killer." I said, "No, I'm no killer. I'm a teacher." And he was asking me what I want. What do you want? Its voice is just so strong. You better be prepared. That's another thing. We're not prepared to hear such things. But, I put myself in there in the line to hear that. So its voice is so deep and so strong that it will, if you're not ready for it, it'll make you shake your shoes. You'll run. You'll have to. Your fear factor will be maximized. So they're actually, nothing to fool with. Nothing, they're the biggest things in the forest, but some reason, they know that better not mess with us. We're nothing but bad news for them. So its communication skills are absolutely phenomenal, by the way. And when I left the mountains, I was being communicated with through miles and miles being away, and actually even for a week afterwards. And then I didn't get any messages or receive anything from it. It is a busy creature. It has to move. It has to go, and has to go where all the food resources are. So it's not going to wait around for me all the time there. But I'm going to go over there, see if I could get on his trail again, and good Lord willing, I'll be able to come back and share more of my research with you all. So I just want to thank you for having me.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. It's pick up, man, had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, bucking egg bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody call it backwards and double time, looking at the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Backwards and double time, looking at the soul in the drummer, low Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down home rhythm, ride chicken porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.